Hello and welcome to Florida Politics Now, where we talk all things that's going on in Florida politics. I'm Cody Butler, joined by David Snyder at WCJB, Jacob Murphy at WCTV, Samara Smith at WWSB, Jessica Foster at WJHG. So this week, the governor signed the controversial election reform bill into law and it drew challenges almost immediately. So let's take a look back of what this bill does from when it was going through the legislative process.
State lawmakers are putting in place. Voting advocates say that this could potentially remove thousands of people from the voter rolls across Florida.
It is becoming harder to become and remain a registered voter in Florida year after year.
27 yeas, 12 nays, Mr. President.
Show the bill passes.
Mostly down party lines, the Senate is moving a controversial elections reforms package in the final days of this year's legislative session.
What is our tolerance for fraud and lack of integrity?
The biggest key provision would require voters to prove they are legal citizens with a photo ID. Real IDs and passports would be acceptable, and the state would have to put immigration status on licenses. Local election supervisors would also access the state database to verify someone's immigration status.
This situation, if you have done it once with DHS-MV, that is presumptive. It is done. That counts. You're finished. You don't have to do it again.
Student and retirement community IDs would no longer be allowed.
That is not enough for us to have faith in and believe that that is an accurate representation of who that person is and that it matches the person who registered to vote.
But voting advocates say getting those documents could cost hundreds of dollars, calling it a modern-day poll tax.
There is no out in the bill to enable somebody who can't afford to get certain documents to be able to vote. So
Common Ground's Amy Keith says she's tired of lawmakers constantly making changes to an already secure election system.
Every year, voters have new rules that they have to follow just to make their voices heard in our elections. And those rules are getting stricter and stricter and harder.
If the governor signs this bill into law, the changes wouldn't take effect until after the November election to give election supervisors more time to implement the changes. At the Florida State Capitol, I'm Cody Butler reporting.
And the ACLU filed a lawsuit on behalf of several voting rights organizations to potentially block this law from taking effect, which most of it does take effect in January.
And Cody, how do they anticipate this playing out? Do you think that the lawsuits are going to be successful?
That's still up in the air. These, I believe it was in federal court. I don't remember offhand exactly. But so, I mean, we've seen the courts strike down parts of laws. We've also seen the courts kind of withhold them. This is also part of the national push on that the president is trying to do as well. So, I mean, it's kind of one of those wait and sees. I mean, they're trying to do this. It seems every time that there's an election bill, it does get challenged in the court system. So we're still waiting on opinions from last year's as well. So, I mean, this will take a while for it to play out. But again, most of the bill doesn't take effect before the upcoming election anyways.
Cody, obviously the DeSantis administration would fight this in court, defend this in court. Are we getting any kind of sense from the major gubernatorial candidates over whether or not their administration would actively defend this in court if it comes to that after January 1st?
I believe so, because I mean, we have Congressman Donalds. He's the front runner right now in the polling for the gubernatorial race, and he supported the effort on the national level. Speaker Paul Renner and Lieutenant Governor Jay Collins voted for the enhancements that we have already in place, and this just kind of builds on the reforms that they've already passed before, and everyone wants to crack down on illegal immigration. So this is kind of a way to do that. But again, you already have to be a citizen to vote under state law. So some of these provisions just kind of enhance what is already currently in state statute.
And Cody, what kind of response or has there been from supervisors of elections across the state? If this goes into effect, it does seem every election cycle, any Floridian who's used to voting and has to kind of go on the website, make sure they're following all the rules for that particular year and make sure they are an actual registered voter. So what kind of messaging do the supervisors of elections have right now?
The biggest feedback, I guess, from them was the timing. It was going to take effect July 1st, so they were able to get that pushed back to give them more time because this is a lot of steps that they have to go through. Senator Grahl had said that she had worked with some of the supervisors to kind of put some of the language together to make sure that they would be able to implement what the legislature is trying to do in this. So it will be a heavy lift, especially initially, as we kind of get a wave of people trying to make sure that they are complying with it. So it's something that is definitely on everyone's radar as we move forward.
And Cody, those who are opposed to this mention the documentation, and that's the case with getting your license too. What are they saying the pushback here is? They're saying it's expensive. What are you seeing?
Yeah, it's expensive because Florida is a transient state. A lot of people move here from other states. So if you, say a woman moved here, she's divorced, you have to have your birth certificate, you have to have your divorce decree and like all the documentations that shows every time you change your name. And kind of going back and getting those paperwork, if you don't already have it on you, is what they say could be the expensive part. But I mean, the state says that 99% of driver's licenses in the state are already Real ID compliant. So we're looking at a small fraction of the population that would necessarily have to go through all this, because if you have the Real ID, you've already done everything that this bill would require of you. All right, and that's all for this. When we come back, we'll take a look at the economic impact that the latest space mission has for the state. Welcome back to Florida Politics Now. And right now we have some astronauts on their way to the moon for the first time in more than 50 years. And with that launch brings millions of dollars to the state of Florida.
Thousands of people were here along the Space Coast to watch the historic launch. People coming as far away as Canada to see this historic moment.
And liftoff. The crew of Artemis II now bound for the moon. Humanity's next great voyage begins.
As the Artemis II crew was lifting off to the moon, Florida's economy was also getting a significant boost.
We're big space fans.
Terry Bird drove from Knoxville, Tennessee to watch the launch. He hasn't missed a manned moon mission.
And whenever we saw the Artemis was launching, we just jumped in our truck camper and took off to Cocoa Beach again.
He is one of the roughly 400,000 people who came to Florida's Space Coast to watch the first manned moon mission in 53 years. and he has good reason to not miss it. A lot of his family worked at the Kennedy Space Center during the space race of the 60s.
That was what we did for vacation. We came to Cocoa Beach and watched the early launches. So that's pretty much been my life, coming to Florida every summer to watch a launch.
Obviously, the world is coming here.
Peter Kranis is the Space Coast Office of Tourism Executive Director. He says after experiencing a lull after the shuttle missions, tourists are coming back as rockets are launching about once a week.
That means anybody that comes here is likely to see a launch, which is a real bucket list item. And of course, Artemis is the ultimate bucket list because now we're back to the moon.
And an estimated 400,000 people checked it off Wednesday.
The big one hasn't happened in decades, so we can't miss this.
It's still too early to tell exactly how many people packed the coastline to watch the launch, but Kranis says they're leaving their mark and money.
Economic impact is tens of millions of dollars every time there's a big launch like this.
And Bird's hoping to experience more big launches in the years to come.
I think it's a great thing. I think it's good for our country. I think it's good for morale in the country. It kind of is something everybody can look at and say that's an accomplishment for humans.
And if you missed this launch, there's going to be another one on Saturday morning here on the Space Coast. In Titusville, I'm Cody Butler reporting.
And about everyone I ran into down along the Space Coast this week was from out of state, so definitely a big tourist boost this week.
And Cody, this was the first launch that you had ever attended.
Yeah, it was. I was actually more excited once I saw it in the air than I realized I thought I would be. I'm not really into space and science and things like that, but it was still a cool moment to see people launching into space for the first time.
And we were watching it live as well. And just to think this is happening right in the Sunshine State, it made me proud to be an American and a Floridian as well. And of course, that economic boost.
Yeah, and a lot of people I spoke to say that they were proud to be American and to see that we were going back to the moon for the first time in more than 50 years to kind of some person said that they want to see us start building on the moon. So it's going to be interesting to see what they come back with.
Not to get too far ahead of ourselves, but of course there's Artemis 3 and Artemis 4 and actually landing on the moon. Any kind of sense from the people that you talk to there, the visitors, that those are even perhaps bigger launches for them to attend?
Potentially down the line, right now we're seeing, as the tourism group said, about a launch a week, sometimes twice a week. Now, most of those aren't manned. So, but it's still just to see something launch from Cape Canaveral into outer space is on a lot of people's buckets list. And I'm sure as Terry Bird from Knoxville, as we saw, he would definitely be back, especially for those manned missions.
You know, something with a large gathering like that certainly attracts politicians. I wonder if you ran into very many state officials from the state of Florida who were there to witness this event and perhaps what their reaction might have been.
I have not. I saw that Senator Ashley Moody had sent a release saying that she was down. I believe she may have been actually at the Space Center to see it launch. So I'm sure there were plenty of them, but I ran into mostly people from out of state. I was down in Cocoa Beach and up in Titusville, where a lot of people were gathered. You could see them lining the highway as I was going between Cocoa Beach and Titusville, just setting up camp to watch the launch this week.
Cody, it was amazing to witness, and that's so amazing that you were able to see this in person. Was that crowd unusually large, or is that the type of numbers they typically see? And I only can imagine from here it's going to grow.
It was large because this was a big manned mission, and it was going to the moon. So we see some groups go up, like just basically just far enough to say that they're in space. That was what CBS morning anchor Gail King had done. But this is going farther than any other mission has gone before because it's going around the moon. So that is what really drew a lot of people. So normally they don't see crowds this large for their weekly launches, but this one was definitely special. And as we keep sending more crews up, I'm sure the crowds will continue to be as large, if not larger.
And
Here's
Cody,
kind of a reach.
go ahead.
Go ahead, Jake.
Okay, I got the chance to be in Titusville about 6 years ago for the first manned SpaceX flight, and it was in the heart of COVID. And the fact that you were able to still socially distance but get crowds on those same bridges that you were at there, and see the majesty, the beauty of some incredible human achievement, that was a really nice unifier during a difficult time. And I do think spaceflight really is a unifier. Talking to the tourism side of things, I know with the commercialized space programs, there had been, more launches, not necessarily manned, but more launches in Texas and in farther places out west. I was wondering for a few years if Florida might lose its touch, but I think with NASA's, the Kennedy Space Center and the fact that Artemis IV with the moon landing in 2028 seems to be full steam ahead. I mean, that's really exciting to think about. I'm sure the tourism officials, it seems like it's a pretty easy job at this point. Just make sure it's still you're able to get to the Space Coast and visit those businesses, and you're doing a pretty good job.
Yeah, and it's something that Florida is trying to stay ahead of. We hear it from the state all the time that we want to be known as the space state as Texas tries to make its gains. But we already have the infrastructure in place, have had it. And so now there's renewed push to try to get more investment from the state level to make sure that we continue to be the leader in space here in the U.S.
Cody, that was kind of the question that I had in mind too, just to play off Jacob's question a little bit. It's always a tug of war, isn't it, at least on the national level between states. And you even see Alabama, of course, with their Huntsville center. And politicians pulling, we want more of the piece of this pie here. And are you continuing to hear from Florida politicians talk about strategies to keep and make sure that NASA remains here?
Yeah, it definitely is. Trying to keep NASA here is definitely a goal on state leaders. We even have Space Florida, I believe is what it's called. It's a state agency dedicated to space here in the state. And now they're trying to advocate the legislature, especially as we do a budget special session, whenever that might be, to kind of increase the spending so they can make some improvements to the Kennedy Space Center and things like that. So I know that there is definitely, especially now that we have another manned mission to the moon, definitely renewed interest in trying to maintain and improve the infrastructure here in the state so that we can continue to be the space state.
And Cody, for people that are watching and maybe they want to go to a future launch, what is some advice that you can give them about navigating and where they need to go and the best way to get the best view?
Well, I mean, you could definitely be on or near the Kennedy Space Center. A lot of people were, I actually drove by the entrance to it, and there were a lot of people kind of camped out on the side of the road, making their own parking spot on the side of the road to see that. But I mean, the beaches around the Space Coast are a great spot because you can relax, enjoy the beach, and enjoy lunch as well. So I was just north of the Kennedy Space Center, so it was south of me, but I know a lot of people were in Cocoa Beach and a little further south in Melbourne, and they were all watching it from the beach, and about everyone got a great view, especially as watching it go up until it hit the clouds at least. All right, and that's all the time we have for this week's Florida Politics Now. We'll be back again next week. See you then.